guidelines. I think Michelle covered those, this morning. Avoid circular reasoning. What that means is a lot of times in proposal writing, the circular reasoning or the circular thinking is where your solution and the problem are the same thing. So, for example, I did a lot of proposal writing workshops. And if I would do it with a group of visiting nurses, and I'd say, okay, well, what is the problem in this community? Well, the problem is there's not enough visiting nurses. And the solution is we need more visiting nurses. Or if I do it with a clinic, well, the problem is there's no clinic. We need a clinic. Or, there's no transportation. We need a van. So that's circular thinking, and we can see it in your proposals. So your problem statement and your solution aren't the same thing. They build on each other. And it's a real simple mistake that a lot of novice proposal writers make. Okay, then there's what I call proposalees, a lot of terms and concepts that may or may not be familiar to you. We have a glossary on our website where we define some of these terms for us. So for example, an LOI, letter of intent or letter of interest, two-step process. We do that with our multi-year. So for example, a two-step process is where you first submit kind of a letter of intent, and then you are invited or not to submit a full proposal. We do not do a two-step process on our small grants. We do a two-step with our multi-year. And, depending on whether we go back to the target grants, which are our large grants up to $75,000 per year, we would probably do a two-step. Can you think of why that would be a desired process for both us and you?
Saves a lot of work if you don't make it past the first step.
For both sides. We don't want you to do this very complicated, comprehensive proposal if we're not interested in your concept. And, and so it works both ways. It saves you time and energy. It saves us time and energy in terms of, going through very thick proposals. So a two-step is not always a bad thing. 501c3, do you know what that is? Anybody? What's a 501c3? Right. It's an IRS designation. The IRS has about 27 different categories. There's 501c1, C2, C3, C4, C27. C3 is the only type that we will fund, either directly or through a fiscal sponsor. You can be a nonprofit. You can be incorporated in New Mexico as a nonprofit and not have a 501c3. That's your tax exemption. You also can get funding from CONALMA if you're not even incorporated, if you're just a voluntary, unincorporated organization, but you align yourself with an organization that's a 501c3. And we have funded some of those efforts. Any other terms you could think of that you'd like a definition for? If it comes to it another point, do let us know. Because if you have a question, chances are other people also have a question, and we'd be happy to add it to our glossary. Then here is some information that Michelle shared with you. The Center for Nonprofit Excellence, Association of Grant Makers. GuideStar, again, is a useful organization. When I was doing grant writing full-time, I would look at 990s because that gave me a lot of information in terms of who had been funded, how much, what kinds of things were funded, who was on the board, what was their mission. There's a lot of information there. So basically, to kind of sum it up, resource development is not just grant writing. That's one strategy. There are many other strategies that you can employ in terms of, you know, the building the relationship, building your own capacity as organizations or as individuals in terms of your own skills, the networking, you know, recognizing that all the resources you have as an organization include your people, your facilities, your expertise. And, you know, I also like to close with something I said earlier, is that grant makers and grant seekers are both part of the same sector. We're both part of the nonprofit sector. And sometimes funders get a little arrogant and think that the money is theirs. It's not theirs. The only exception would be family foundations. But all charitable organizations have to grant out money. They have to. You know, the minimum for a number of categories is 5%. So, you know, the money has to be granted out. It may be less than it was before, although there are some foundations like the Thaw and Atlantic Philanthropies that are spend-down foundations. That means that they're spending out everything. They're not just, you know, spending the 5% per year, but they are spending down everything. There is a lot of resources out there. And resources are not just dollars, they can be, you know, other kinds of expertise. Any questions?